Hey guys, I'm Craig. I wanted to do a video review of my 2014 FLHTK Harley Davidson Ultra Limited. Um, this is actually my second Harley that I've owned. The first one was a Sportster, I think it was an XL 1200R. This is the first big one. Let me preface by saying that I've had a lot of bikes in the last 20 years, 25 years. More than I can remember. I've had everything from sport bikes to cruisers, Japanese cruisers, a lot of sport bikes. I've had a couple, three Gold Wings, of Kawasaki Voyager. I traded, actually, I sold my Gold Wing, my latest GL 1800 for this. Um, I got a deal on this. I just couldn't refuse. So I said, you know what? Let me try one of the Rushmore. This is the first year of the Rushmore package. You know, that's the the wet heads, the infotainment system. Is supposed to have a little bit better suspension. Um, Coming off a Goldwing, I want to say there are some things about this bike that I really like. There's some things I don't like. Um, you know, they talk about the Harley Davidson having a soul to a motorcycle, whereas the Goldwing is more of a clinical experience, and I'll agree with that to some extent. When you ride this, um, you can feel the 100 years of heritage in it. The way it feels, it's refined as far as the ergonomics and just the way everything works. It's actually a nice riding experience. There's some things I don't like about that same experience. It's kind of like a double-edged sword. As far as this particular one, it's pretty much bone stock, with the exception of I added some really slick Cobra slip-ons. I don't normally like Cobra mufflers, but I thought these looked really good. I like that kind of double-walled, rounded tip. Um, and they were really reasonable. I said, you know what? I want to make it sound like a Harley. Let me put some mufflers on there, and actually, it pleasantly surprised me how nice it sounds with those on. Um, Getting back to the thing I don't like, one of the things I don't like about it, um, this has got that cylinder deactivation system. I forget what they call it, EIMIS or something like that. Whatever. Basically, it shuts the rear cylinder off when the temperature of the engine is at a certain level. You know, when you're in parade mode or at a light or whatever. And once it goes into switches into that mode, you can feel it, and the bike really shakes. It's ridiculous. To be honest with you, I've ridden the 8 valve, the Milwaukee 8 they call it. Um, much smoother, much more refined overall package, much more Japanese like. I'm going to get some hate mail for that, but it is what it is. I've ridden a lot of Japanese cruisers, and they're finally getting smoother. Harley's getting smoother with their engine, and I think it's a good thing. But aside from that, I think what I just recently did, I turned off that cylinder. You can turn that off, that feature where it deactivates that rear cylinder. I've turned that feature off. I don't usually sit idling very long anyway, and I don't particularly care for that feature. If I was going to be sitting in a light for an extended period of time, I probably would turn it on, because it basically acts like an air pump, and it just cools that back cylinder. So it's a good idea in theory, but in practice, it's not good. Getting back to some things that I do like about it, again, the ergonomics I think are excellent. I'm 6'1", and the bike fits me good. I'm comfortable on it. The bike came with that Harley accessory backrest. I believe it's adjustable. I don't even know where the lever is for it, but the way it's set up works good for me. This is the stock windshield. I ride with let me just pan over to my helmet. I ride with a modular helmet. Um, Even with the helmet closed, I still get wind buffeting. with this particular windshield, and that's with this vent open, as you can see. It gets worse when I close that like that, but I particularly care for that. I'd say any speeds over 55 miles an hour, I start to get buffeting, and it gets worse the faster you go. The Goldwing with the V-Stream, National Cycle V-Stream on it, I could have that helmet flipped up and go down the road at 85 miles an hour, and there was zero buffeting. I'm not happy with that. I have played around with these air wings. I've tried opening them, closing them, trying different angles to see if I can improve it or whatever. And you can change the effect a little bit, but I think I need a taller windscreen. I may do that. I don't know if I'm going to keep the bike long enough to do it. But the bike sounds fantastic. It's got good torque. It's nowhere near as fast as the Goldwing is by a long shot. But it's not a race bike. It's a cruiser. It's a touring bike. Handling on it is good. Once you get to a point, once you get closer to that 8/10 or 9/10 performance, then you can start to feel the suspension start to show its weak points. But just normal riding, it's competent, composed, and pleasant to ride. It's a comfortable ride. I have actually never messed with the rear shocks. I know they're air pressure adjustable, like I had on my Voyager. I've never messed with them. Never really felt the need to. I've never ridden with a passenger on the back, other than my wife around the block. I've never felt the need to adjust the rear shocks. But as far as the luggage goes, the top loading bags of the Harley is superior to the side loading bags of the Goldwing. I will definitely give it props for that. That's better, easier loading. The Tour Pack is definitely much wider than the GL 1800. I think it's probably easier loading, and if I carried a passenger on the back, that would be a superior setup, because it opens from the side opposed to opening like a regular trunk on the GL 1800. So you couldn't have a passenger on the back seat and open the trunk at the same time on the GL. Wouldn't work. Let's get over to some of the Rushmore features, like this infotainment system that they've got. Let me say that I like the infotainment system on this better than the Goldwing. Both systems, you can create a GPX route on your computer and then upload it here onto the bike locally with a USB thumb drive. The infotainment system is better on the Harley, in that it's got more features, more capabilities. It lets you do more things underway. Whereas the Goldwing will let you adjust audio and things of that nature, or the music and stuff. It lets you adjust that on the fly, but it locks you out of anything else, especially navigational wise. Whereas the Harley lets you do that, but where Harley dropped the ball is I don't know who they used for their navigation product, but it sucks. There's just no way of getting around it. It sucks. It's the Goldwing is Garmin based, even though you're locked out when you're moving of it. It's just superior, especially if you're a long distance touring rider. We set up 2-week trips on a computer, and we upload them to the bike, and we want the bike to adhere to what we plan. The Goldwing Garmin based system does that way better than the Harley does. It's obnoxious on the Harley. If you miss one of those shaping points, it will not give up and go to the next one on its own. You have to tell it to skip it. Otherwise, no matter how hard you try, the bike will take you back to that shaping point that you missed, unless you go into the menu structure and tell it to skip that waypoint. really annoying. It's just not as they really should have just went with Garmin on it. It's the best. But I'll move on from that. I like this garage setup here where I can stick my. I have a couple of phones that I carry, but my primary phone's an iPhone. I basically plug it in and stick it right in there. I can Bluetooth stream to the bike, or I can plug into it and it'll control with the bike's controls here, which I do like. Um, let's get to the controls a little bit too while we're here at it. I think Harley made a mistake putting, I don't know if you can see that here, but for 14 they put the CB control on the right hand side, which is silly. I ride with a lot of people that have CBs, so we're communicating a lot with CBs, and with the control on the right hand side there, you're actuating the throttle. Imagine trying to in a right hand turn or a corner or something, actuating the throttle, and then trying to initiate a CB message. It's awkward at best. Also, I ride with a female that's got an ultra limited low, and her hands are kind of small, and on a number of occasions she's reached over and accidentally bumped the engine kill, and she's stalled the engine. It shouldn't be on the right side. It should have been on the left side where it always was, and that's where all the other bikes have it. In fact, the Goldwing is a trigger here, which is what it should have been. But and then Harley went and they put the cruise control on the left side. I think that, if anything, that should have probably been over there, kind of like the Goldwing. But at any rate, that's what Harley chose to do. And if you see any forums, they'll talk about it, and a lot of people are very, very happy about that. But and also, I will say these controls here, while they're kind of cool with their multi-function, you can press in to go home, forward, up, volume up and down, and same thing on this side. There's an enter button, up, down, left. It's the joysticks or whatever you want to call them. That you have to be too precise. You have to pay attention too much with what you're doing with them, especially if you're wearing gloves. I mean, if you're in cooler climates and you're wearing heavier winter gloves, whatever, it's kind of awkward. I think I don't know. I'll take them or leave them. I guess the more I use them, the more I'm getting used to them and comfortable with them. But I think they could have probably gone a little bit better, a different direction with them, and had a better actuation. But as far as the stereo system goes, the sound quality is excellent, way better than the Goldwing. I don't know if they're using Harman Kardon or who they're using for these, but the stock sound system is excellent. Personally, I had no need to upgrade that. Some guys I know do. I have a friend that went hog wild with his, and he really upgraded his sound system. But I think the stock sound system is actually excellent. What I'm using, I'm plugged in anyway, 90% of the time. I may get that new WIM system if I keep it. I don't know. Then I can go Bluetooth to my Cena 20S Evo that I just got. But getting back to the bikes, the bike's bone stock, like I said, with the exception of the mufflers, and then I've just added a couple of trim pieces, the Willie G stuff that I really like. Just looks like a very nice quality piece, and it's just a beautiful look. It just gives the bike a little bit more personality and character. As far as the overall ownership of it, these classic cruiser bikes are a pain in the ass to clean and keep clean. You know how it is. You can spend 5 hours on a weekend in a garage really detailing your bike, and then all it takes is about 10 seconds down a wet road, and all that work is pretty much out the window. It's kind of annoying. But whereas a Goldwing, you pretty much wash it like a car, and In about 30 minutes, you wash it and dry it, and you're done, and the bike looks brand new again. I know we're comparing apples and oranges here, but it's just something that kind of bothers me a little bit about it. The the bike is a really a neat thing. You know, you like I said earlier, you ride it, you can feel the heritage and the soul and the character of the bike. I like that. I'm going to get a lot of hate on this one, what I'm about to say, but it is what it is. Having friends that have owned these ever since the 14s came out, Harley's had a lot of problems with them. I don't care what you say; they're not reliable. I've personally witnessed one Harley, my friend Tina's Harley, that's had a water pump failure, a compensator failure. I guess that's in the primary. She's had a electrical switch setup. I forget which. I think it was a switch in the left handlebar. I thought. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was. There was a switch, I believe, the clutch interlock switch, I think, failed on hers. They had to replace that whole assembly there. My buddy Doodle's bike, he's got a leak. Yeah, Harleys don't leak anymore. Maybe most of them don't, but my friend Doodle's, his leaks. It still does as far as I know. It's a small minor leak, but it's still leaking. It's just enough to drive him crazy. But at any rate, I've heard a lot of problems over the last couple of years. There's a friend of a friend, Lauren. She had a Fat Boy with a 110. I don't think she had it a year, and her engine's toast. Harley had to replace the engine under warranty. They're just not reliable, or at least reliable by today's standards, in my opinion. What I will say though, on the flip side of that, to give some props to Harley Davidson, and that is, you can't drive through a town and not have a Harley Davidson dealership. So, and while we've been on the road, when Tina's had bike problems, when you're out of town, they put you to the front of the list, and they take really good. Generally speaking, the customer service at the dealerships level for warranty repair has been phenomenal, from what I've witnessed. So, you got to give credit where credit's due. The dealer network and the support is second to none. And for a lot of people, that's enough to keep them coming back for more. And I get it. I can respect that. What I'm gonna do, I don't know. I'm kind of like a sport bike guy by nature. I'm not into the really classic vintage type of thing. Although I do like all the features and the gadgetry. You know, once you have cruise control and the onboard integrated navigation and all those things, it's hard. It's really hard to go back to a bike that doesn't have those things. So that really limits the pool of bikes that you can go with. I'm a sport bike guy by nature. I don't think I'm going to go back to another Goldwing unless they come out with an all new Goldwing for 2018, which is the rumor. We'll have to wait and see. The new Yamaha Venture is enticing, although I'm disappointed that it's all air cooled and no liquid cooling at all. If I can get back to this bike for a moment, what I do want to mention is, whereas my old Voyager, well, when I say old, I think it was a 12 model, that was a fully liquid cooled bike, but the heat that bike put out on the right hand side was unbearable. I couldn't stand it. One of the reasons why I got rid of it. This bike, the heat's not an issue at all. It really is not. They did a really good job with the heat management. They've got, both sides have the radiators in here, and there's fans. And when you can feel it when you pull up to a light or a stop or whatever, you can almost hear the fans come on. You stick your hand here, and it blows the air out away from the rider. So to be honest with you, I never really felt heat on my right foot, which I was very surprised. I always run with those vents open, and I'm in Florida here, and it gets hot. And heat's not a problem. That'll give it kudos for. It's a non-issue on this one. I have ridden the older non-air-cooled 103s, and excuse me, the non-liquid cooled wet head 103s, and I have sensed the heat on the right side that I didn't like, but this one's not an issue. So that was definitely an improvement with the Rushmore model for sure. So that's where I'm going to leave it for now. I want to thank you all for listening in. I don't do very many bike videos or reviews, if you will. I hope this is helpful for somebody like me that maybe has been bouncing around on bikes, maybe went from Goldwing to a Harley, or is about to go to a Harley or considering it. My advice would be, if you want a different experience, go ahead and try it. Just go in knowing that you're not going to get sport bike like performance, although Goldwing is not a sport bike, but you get a sport bike like experience out of it. You're not going to really get that out of this. Maybe if you got maybe the newer 114 Milwaukee 8 engine, maybe that would be better or closer to a Goldwing. I don't know, but this is not. In fact, Tina and I had an impromptu drag race somewhere, I think in Utah, or I don't remember what state we were in, but it really was not even close. So, but if you're into the relaxed, vintage ride, that's just a very comfortable experience, just a pleasant sounding, comfortable ergonomics, and the whole Harley mystique and all that. If you want that, if you're okay with that, you will like this bike. There's a lot to like about it from a touring perspective, and just cruising around. I mean, it's a pretty bike. You can't take that away from it. I wish it was a little bit easier to maintain. You've got 3 fills here, where a Goldwing you only have 1. Most metric bikes you only have 1. Here you have 3. To reply, as you can see, I changed my own rear tires at my Harbor Freight setup. To change this rear tire, I haven't done it on this bike, but I've done it on Tina's bike twice. I did it on Rhett's bike once. So I've changed 3 tires on a Harley, on a Ultra. And it's a process. It's a lot of work to do. On a Goldwing, you pretty much 5 bolts and the wheel comes right off a single-sided swing arm, so it's easy peasy. I can have a Goldwing wheel off before I even get this bike up on a jack. There's my pit bull there, and get ready, get it strapped down. The Goldwing wheel is off the bike already at that point. If Tina was here, she'd say, well, it doesn't take but about 5 minutes to change the air filter on this bike, where it can take 3 or 4 hours on a Goldwing to change an air filter. And that's true, but you only have to do that every, 20,000 miles or something like that on a Goldwing. So it's not really that big of a deal. But anyway, thanks for listening in. I hope this was helpful for somebody, and we'll catch you on the next video. Thanks.